In this video, we're going to talk about terminal ownership. In other words, when you walk into a merchant's location and you see a credit card terminal sitting on the counter, one of the most important questions you need to ask is, do you own the terminal? Do you rent the terminal? Do you lease the terminal? Or is it a free terminal? And so we're going to talk about each of those four possible terminal ownership types. Number one, let's talk about the lease. There are still some companies here in the U.S. that lease credit card terminals. Now, I'm not going to say that every lease is a terrible idea because it really depends on how much you're charging them on the lease. And definitely a lot of our team members in Canada still use the leases up there. Now, what a lease is pretty simple. The merchant gets a credit card terminal, and it's as if they own the terminal, but they're actually on a lease where they're paying a certain amount of money for, maybe it's $29.99 a month for 48 months that they're paying in order to own that credit card terminal. So rather than paying for it up front, but they want to own it, they can do it on a lease. Now, I actually have used a few leases here and there. Sometimes you'll use a lease, especially if somebody is getting a check scanner and a PIN pad and a credit card terminal, but they want to own it. I have one client that likes to get all of that, and he wants to own everything. He doesn't want it to be a loaner, and he also doesn't want to pay $1,000 up front for it. So I give him a lease whenever he opens a new location and he leases the equipment. So a lease. Now the great thing about the lease, a couple things about it. First of all, usually the lease is going to provide a lot of commission up front. So if your company offers leases, they're probably paying you $400, $500, $600 up front for that lease. So each lease you sell, you're going to get more money up front on that lease. But the downside to it, of course, is that it is a little bit more difficult to sell sometimes because now you've got to sell something that's a monthly payment for a long period of time, and those are a little bit more difficult to sell. So that's your first type, is the lease. And again, talk to your credit card processing provider and find out what they offer. So you have your lease. The second type of terminal ownership that you have is a rental. Now, rentals are very common in Canada, not quite as common in the U.S. market here, but it does still come up quite a bit. A rental is very simple. Usually it's going to be on the credit card processing statement, which we'll talk about a little later, and you'll see a terminal fee or a rental fee. So in that case, they don't own the terminal and they're not locked in to continue paying for it, but as long as they have the terminal, they're paying a rental fee. The third type of ownership would be the free terminal. Now, in the U.S., very, very prevalent, starting to become prevalent in Canada as well. The free terminal option is pretty simple. Basically, you offer a free credit card machine to the merchant as long as they continue processing with you. This is an option that's made available by, like I said, a lot of processors in the U.S. and a few in Canada. Some companies only offer the terminal for free, but they don't offer the PIN pad or the check reader. Some offer all of them for free, but they're going to have certain pricing requirements. So there has to be some profit from the account in order to cover the cost of the equipment. So you have the lease, which is where they pay a certain amount of money for a certain amount of months. They're locked in. At the end of that time, they own the terminal. The second type that you have the lease, and you have the rental, where they pay monthly for it, but they're not locked in and they don't ever own the terminal. They're just renting it. The third type is free equipment, and that's where they have the terminal for free as long as they're with that credit card processing company. And then the fourth type is purchase. So this would be where they say, I'm not making a monthly payment. I just want to buy the terminal, and you can sell them the terminal. Most credit card processing agents will sell it at a small profit. Maybe they buy the terminal for $350 and they sell it for $450 and make $100 markup. So that's an option. So you have the purchase option. And again, that's not as common really either in Canada or in the U.S. The purchase option is more something that people will do that are larger businesses that say, I'm sick of switching terminals every time I switch processors. I just want to own my equipment so that I can always have it reprogrammed, and I don't have to worry about if I switch companies, I got to switch machines and learn a new terminal. So that's the four ownership types. Now, the reason it's so important to understand that is because when you go into a business and you're going to make them an offer for merchant services, you've got to understand what your offer needs to include as far as equipment. Does it need to include a terminal? In other words, if they are leasing their terminal, then you can reprogram that terminal. Again, if your company supports that specific terminal, then you can reprogram that terminal and you're all set. And they can just keep paying their lease payment. You don't have to provide them a free terminal. You don't have to provide them a terminal at all. You can just make that sale, get a reprogram, and you're done. Start getting your residual check. But if they don't own their terminal, let's say they're renting it, or let's say that it's a free terminal from another company, you need to know that, because if you switch them, they're going to lose their machine, and you're going to have to provide them with another machine. So it's very important that you understand the ownership type of the terminal. So to go over those again real quick, when you walk in, and again, this is a great conversation starter as well. You can watch our other training course on how to sell merchant services, but this is actually a great conversation piece to talk to them about the ownership. So you could say, now I notice you have a VX510 terminal over there. Do you own that, or lease it, or rent it, or what's the deal with that? And it's a great conversation starter to get into the conversation. So again, the 4 types are the lease, the rental, the free equipment, or owning the equipment.